Hello, Year 6, and welcome to another day of Book Club where we're reading The Explorer. So, yesterday we read the chapter called Sardines, where they fished out the empty sardine tin and they found that someone they thought had tampered with the rope. So, Fred is beginning to wonder what might happen to them. I had a book, said Fred, about a man called Hiram Bingham. He was climbing and he came across a whole city built by the Incas. It wasn't exactly discovered because some of the Peruvians knew about it, but nobody else did. Can you imagine? It would be like suddenly finding the ruins of Birmingham in 1,000 years' time. Leela moved closer. Her eyes were set far apart in her face, eyes that could look full of many different things at once. Now they radiated curiously. I've heard about it. It's called Machu Picchu. Yes, that was the name. Usually, though, the men go missing. Like us, said Max. Sort of, said Fred. Except usually it's because they're dead, which we're not. Yet, said Con ominously. Fred ignored that. And there was this man called Percy Fawcett. He was looking for a ruined city. He called it the City of Zed. And then, not that long ago, it was in 1925, I think, he just disappeared. And another man, Christopher McLaren, he went on an expedition to find out if Fawcett's dream was real. He was my favourite. He wrote letters about waking up to find maggots growing in the crook of his elbow. How lovely, said Con. Did the maggots get him? Nobody knows. He sent a telegram and then he disappeared. Fred hesitated. I memorised it, actually. How does it go? Asked Leela. Fred cleared his throat. Just a line from this last outpost of civilization to advise you that I am about to go out of communication. I am well and fit, and there is every hope of a successful issue to the expedition, risky as it is in some ways. Con raised both eyebrows. Sounds fun. Newspapers want people to sound like that, as if they have very clean shoes. But I know he wasn't like that. The other men said he was the maddest and bravest of a mad, brave generation. Why did he memorize it, though? Fred blew on the fire again so they wouldn't see his face reddening. I just like the idea that there's some things that we still don't know. At school, it's the same thing every day. I like that it might be all right to believe in large, mad, wild things. The journey on the raft had taken up the whole morning, but still the afternoon stretched ahead of them, thick and green and vibrating with heat. We need more wood, said Fred. They would burn through what they had by the time dark came. They needed so many things, he thought, food and a plan or a map or a passing ship, but at least wood was something he knew where to find. His vision swam as he stood. He was growing weaker, and the blood in his veins felt thinner. At first, Fred went fast, his head down, marking the trees with an X scratched in the bark, watching his feet among the roots and fallen branches. But soon he began to slow. There was so much to look at, so much that was strange, so much that was new and vast, and so very palpably alive. The trees dipped down their branches, laden with leaves broad enough to sew into trousers. He passed a tree with a vast termite nest, as big as a bathtub, growing around it. He gave it a wide berth. The greenness, which had seemed such a forbidding wall of colour, was not, up close, green at all, Fred thought. It was 1,000 different colours, lime and emerald and moss and jade, and a deep, dark, almost black green that made him think of sunken ships. Fred breathed in the smell. He'd been wrong to think it was thick, he thought. It was detailed. It was a tapestry of air. The trees clustered more closely together. The further he walked, the light grew dimmer, though he was sure it was still mid-afternoon. A deep green filtering down through a roof of leaves and vines. He heard something move in one of the green bushes that clustered around his feet. Hello, he called. He stepped backwards. Hi. As he called, something sharp scraped against his arm. He jumped and leapt away, swearing, and felt his mouth filled with the taste of fear, bile, and tin. But it wasn't a snake, or even a spider. Being stupid, muttered Fred. It was just a bush. Or perhaps it wasn't even a bush. He leant closer. It was a clump of spiky fruit. A pineapple, he whispered aloud. Fred felt his fingertips prickle, shot through with the spark of discovery. This, he thought, must be what Columbus had felt like. He reached out to pull the fruit from its throne of leaves, and then snatched his hand back, watching blood swell from a serrated gash in his thumb. Ah, he whispered. He braced himself, wrenched up 5 of the biggest pineapples, and set off a run, a slightly jolting run, checking every few trees for the X and doubling back 3 times. At last he burst through the trees at the edge of the clearing. He was met by a scream. Get back! Leela was standing in front of Max, one arm pushing him behind her, a stick pointed in the direction of Fred's throat. Con stood beside her, fists raised. I brought some pineapples, panted Fred. Then slowly he took in the scene. He grinned. Were you planning to kill me? We thought you were a wild animal, Con said, flushing deep red. Call out next time you come charging straight at us. It was Max who saw the pineapples in his arms. He gave a roar of joy that shook the fire and sat down, his teeth barely ready. He held out both hands. Mine, 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 he said. Fred turned the pineapple in his hands, looking for a way in. Gingerly, he bit into the side of the fruit. A spike got up his nose, another into his gum, but the juice was the most spectacular thing he had ever tasted. It was sweet and warm, and it sparkled on his tongue. It's amazing, he said. It's like eating electricity. Con took a bite of hers. It's more like waging a war than seems fair. For dessert, she said. Fred used his nails to scrape away the skin, and dug out a handful of flesh. He held it out to Max. Here, you'll like it. Leela was bent over her fruit, her plaits hanging over her lap. Now she looked up and grinned. Are you sure you wouldn't like a flint? She said. She'd cut into her pineapple with one of the arrowhead flints and carved out rough palm-sized chunks. She laid them out in a row. Oh, that's an improvement, said Fred. Somehow, he had pineapple juice in his ear. Con laughed. Leela hacked the 5th pineapple into quarters. For breakfast, she said. She wrapped each piece in a large leaf and stacked them outside the den. Wow, what an amazing chapter. I'll see you tomorrow for more Storytime Year 6.